Brexiteers have called EU's bluff over withdrawal, says LEO MCKINSTRY. Relentless gloom is the essential feature of propaganda about Brexit from the EU and the Remain lobby. We are continually told that the end of rule by Brussels will lead to economic meltdown, global isolation and political paralysis. The task of withdrawal is said to be so complicated that it will require years of tortuous negotiations and an army of civil servants, but this narrative of despair keeps being confounded by events. Contrary to all the apocalyptic predictions, the economy has not collapsed since the Brexit vote. Yesterday, figures showed that the unemployment rate has fallen to 4.4%, the lowest level since 1975, while wages are rising at 2%. The property market is buoyant, manufacturers' order books are busy, tourism is booming, and Britain is now the most popular destination in Europe for foreign investment. The government has published a clear strategy for Brexit, contradicting all the rhetoric about the impossible complexity of the process. As the documents show, the supposed problems that the Remains and the EU pretend are insurmountable could be resolved easily. Last month, the government revealed that the rights of EU citizens living in the UK would be fully respected once Brexit is enacted, making a mockery of the liberal elites wailing about xenophobia. This week, ministers have issued two further papers. The first, presented on Tuesday by Brexit Secretary David Davis, envisaged an innovative free trade deal between the UK and the EU to be preceded by a time-limited transition period where we would retain some of the features of the customs union but would be free to conclude trade agreements with other international partners. The second, released yesterday, set out the case for a frictionless, non-physical border in Northern Ireland, so that both business and the peace process would be maintained. These papers amount to a sensible, coherent plan for Brexit. Effectively, the government has called the bluff of the EU. All the allegedly nightmarish obstacles on the path to British independence would swiftly disappear with goodwill and cooperation, but those are precisely qualities that neither the European Commission nor the Remain lobby demonstrate in their mindset. Brexit has to fail, and their prophecies of doom must be turned into a reality. That explains why they have reacted so negatively this week to the government's proposals. Scottish nationalist leader Nicola Sturgeon, one of the high priestesses of the Remain movement, called them daft. Chief EU negotiator Michel Barnier was unable to muster a single argument about the substance and instead claimed that other issues, like his demand for a vast so-called divorce payment, had to be settled first. That point was echoed by Guy Verhofstadt, the European Parliament's representative on the negotiating team, who described the British trade plan as a fantasy like so many at a Brexit outbursts. His words were solemnly reported by parts of the media as if they were a well-judged analysis. But they were nothing of the sort. Verhofstadt is a federalist fanatic who thinks that nothing should stand in the way of the creation of a United States of Europe, complete with a centralized European government, tax system and army. A federal Europe is the only option, he said in February. Expecting a sensible response from Verhofstadt is like seeking advice from Jeremy Corbyn on investment banking. It is tragic that a zealot like Verhofstadt has any say in the negotiations, but the very fact that he has been given this role says everything about the EU's hostile stance. With a different attitude, the Brexit talks could proceed smoothly and swiftly. After all, there is nothing in this week's strategy papers to which the EU could seriously object on the question of Ireland, a common travel area operated across the British Isles back in 1921, so a frictionless border should be simple to implement. Similarly, Britain and the EU already have mutual free trade. The creation of a tariff-free zone, therefore, should be straightforward. It is in the economic interests of Europe to reach such an agreement, given the EU's annual £90 billion trade surplus with Britain. But what really seems to motivate Brussels is cash and punishment. The commissars bang on about the misnamed £80 billion divorce payment because they are desperate to maintain the EU's finances. This has nothing to do with the genuine economic needs of Europe. On the contrary, it is all about upholding the EU's self-serving, bureaucratic empire, which has rightly become a byword for mismanagement, waste and extravagance. This is an organization whose error-strewn accounts have not been given a clean bill of health for almost 2 decades. No wonder that Barnier and his team cannot provide any details to back up their exorbitant demand, which has no legal or fiscal justification. The ideologues cannot abide the thought of Britain flourishing outside the EU because that would prove the emptiness of their dogmatic pretense that European free trade requires a federal superstate and political integration. In their eagerness to hinder Brexit, they are willing to harm their own citizens for the sake of their own ideology. They must not be allowed to get away with this destructive approach. British pragmatism should prevail. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and don't forget to subscribe English News Hub for new excited videos.